So hello, everyone. We are here for the PPG Coaches Takeover podcast episode with Bryan Robinson. My name is Jessica Waugh. I'm a special projects director as well as a mentor coach for PPG, and I am so excited to be the interviewer for Bryan Robinson. Bryan, tell us a little about yourself. Like, where are you based? What do you do with PPG? Like, why are you on here today?
Oh man, I love it. I'm so stoked to talk to you today, Jessica. I am based in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have been with PPG now for, I guess you'd say, from training to students, about 6 months. I've got about 3 years of personal development and coaching underneath my belt. And I'm coming up on my board certification in October, which you might know a little something about there.
I love it. Well, today's topic is all about mindset, all about accountability, all about productivity. And let's just kind of like dive into you and who you are and what prompted you to dive into this world of health and wellness coaching and mentor coaching for teens. Like what made you get into this world?
Wow. Oh man, that's a great question. Whenever I got started into like the personal development space, I can honestly say it found me. And not only did it kind of find me, but in a way, when I began down that path, then I found PPG, or we found each other. So it was definitely a progressive path. And it all began when about like 3.5 years ago, like I said, when I found myself content and complacent. Has that ever happened to you before?
Yeah.
Right on. It was a similar situation. Like, I'm not sure if you know, and for those of you that don't know this, I was a tour manager and an MC for some of the world's most popular DJs for the better part of 6 years. Spent a lot of time on the road, traveling and rocking stages. However, at a certain point in time, I found myself kind of in a rut, and I didn't know exactly what that point of friction was, but I was just finding myself doing the exact same thing over and over again, but it wasn't bringing me any joy or fulfillment. I was just kind of, just going about the actions. And it wasn't until I kind of realized, like, if I keep doing what I did today, tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that, that nothing was really going to change, especially my mood and my disposition towards life. So like something had to change. I didn't quite know exactly what it was, but it was definitely something, You ever been in like a similar position and it's you like nodding like, oh man.
Yeah. And not many people can pull themselves out of comfort and complacency. So like, what did you tap into to be able to say, okay, I need to change? Like, cause it sounds like you were very successful in the world of, DJing and tour managing. Like what did you tap into to be able to do that?
Wow. It was honestly, I started tapping in to my resources, and my very first resource, happened to be a book. It was called David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. And that book, I can honestly say, was a pivotal changing point in my life. That book came from a really good friend of mine who is a fellow DJ and artist who I'd been touring with for, who I'd been touring with for quite some time. His name is Rob Ferguson, AKA DJ Fergie, shout out. He passed me that book when he noticed that I was kind of just like, not my usual like peppy self. I was kind of just like, everything is and very bleh, kind of like some teenagers I've worked with, to be honest with you. And essentially I started to read this book and it sparked something in me. And essentially, for those that don't know, like, David Goggins is kind of a hard ass. However, he's also very motivating. And what I found fired up in this book was now is the time. If there's a change you want to generate, then just do it. And not just do it, but like do it now. Like whatever that step could be, like put down the book. If you want to start running, then put down the book and go for a walk around the block. Like if you think you want to do something different in life or change careers, pull up a YouTube video. Start like watching it. ask someone about it. But essentially, no matter what it is, like take some initiative and just take that first step, no matter how uncomfortable it is. So essentially, that was like the catalyst that started me down my road to like this personal development space. I didn't quite know what I was doing. I sure didn't think I was going to become a certified health and wellness coach or a mentor coach for Positive Presence Global. But I did know that I wanted to enhance my mind and my thought process. I knew I wanted my body to feel good. I wanted my body to feel like a lot better. I wanted to like think about things differently. So in order to start this process, I genuinely just had to like start from scratch. And I kind of had to break myself down and go, okay, well, what don't I want to do anymore? And what do I want to replace it with? So I used to smoke and drink all the time. And I was like, well, that's not a very healthy habit. So I guess I'll stop doing one of those. And the very first one I did was like drinking, because I didn't drink every day. So of course I chose the easy one. I'm going to wipe that one right off the table. So I quit drinking. And once I quit drinking, my energy levels started to go up. So I already kind of worked out. So now it's like, all right, well, I've got a little bit more energy and I'm not hungover. Yeah. So now it's time to increase these workout paces. So that was like my first step. I'm going to work out a little bit more. Well, while I'm working out, I wanted to sharpen my mind. So I'm not going to just like space out while I'm at the gym, at least not every day. So I was like, all right, I'll throw in a book every once in a while. So now I can kind of like habit stack this. I can listen to a book and kind of work out. And that was kind of like my first little, like, I would later find out, called a habit stack, where I was like doing two things at once that were both positive towards a goal. But once again, I didn't really know what that was towards. I just knew it felt good. So I wanted to make sure I stayed on that track. And then after doing that for like a few weeks, then like the books that I was reading, I was like, man, they're right. And the next book I was reading happened to be Atomic Habits. And that book really helped shape and kind of like mold what I was becoming and not knowing I was becoming it. It was kind of like all right, well, that sounds like a really good idea. So I'm going to try that. I'm like, hey, you should write down your goals. It helps with like tracking them. It's like, well, I don't really have any goals. All right. Run tomorrow, work out tomorrow, yoga tomorrow, read book.
Baby steps.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. So literally, like when I first started off down this path of personal development, I bought a notebook. In fact, I've actually got one of them right here. And I bought a notebook. And the very first thing I wrote in that book was yoga, gym, audio, Zen, which was the 4 things I knew that if I incorporated every day, I should be a little bit better. If I work out, do a little bit of yoga, read a little bit of something that's not fiction, and just focus on these little routines, then like I should be a little bit better. So that's what I started off doing, just writing down those routines and then writing down how I felt afterwards. Right.
That's huge. There's immediately what comes to my mind is accountability. And so many people will say they want to start something, say that they're ready for a change, say that they're going to do this, but they do it for like a week or two. And then they're like, man, I don't need to do this anymore. So like, what did you do to keep yourself accountable?
Oh man, that's a great question. There was several things I actually did to create that accountability. And at the time, like I said, I didn't quite realize what they were while I was doing them, but I would later find out. For me to hold and maintain that accountability, it started with me actually writing down what I wanted to do the day before I did it. So it was like literally going, all right, what do I want to do tomorrow? Like I said, that's going to make me a little bit better. And those were the very first 4 things I started with, but I would notice that list kind of expanded upon when I would sit down and kind of write it at the end of the night. I would think about like my workout in this morning. I was like, oh, gym. All right, gym. The next day I was like, well, what do I want to work out? Oh man, well, I'm going to do chest. And last week, when I worked out chest, I had a pretty good workout. So now maybe I'm going to push it a little bit, or I'm going to tweak it a little bit. So now I started to really think about how I was feeling during these exercises. So I wasn't just blindly doing them. I was giving some thought to them. And once I started to give some thought to what I was doing, then I began to adjust it. I was like, well, if I don't really like that particular activity, then I should do something different. But as long as I'm doing something, and that accountability honestly kind of grew from something I heard in Atomic Habits, and it was a saying: it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It just needs to be something, because something is greater than nothing at all. The moment I understood that, it was like, oh my God, I don't have to work out for an hour and a half and hammer weights and then go run like a marathon. I can kind of just go to the gym and like work out. And if I'm not having a fire day, that's okay, as long as I got there and got it done. Or if I really just am not feeling it, then maybe I'll just do 20 jumping jacks and 20 push-ups and, a walk around the block. And that's my workout. I moved today and I feel good about it. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And I kind of just started to give myself that permission to be a little flexible. Now, of course, that works for like a while and you're going to be like motivated, but some days you just don't feel it. And on those days, it's like, all right, well, what are you going to do now? That's where the accountability really comes in. And I looked back and I was like, well, I'm not feeling it. So now I told myself, well, if I'm not feeling it and I got to like look in this book, you can kind of see right there. I look in this book, it's like, well, I've already done this for like the past 5 days. I don't really necessarily like, well, why am I not feeling it today? And that's where my accountability came into play. I started to create this accountability by just kind of looking at my past performance. And it's kind of like, oh, wow, I've been at this for like 5 days. I've been at this for like 6 days, 7 days. And then I started to like get this thing going where it was like, well, just don't break the chain. That's the goal. Like, you just got to show up just a little bit. Like, if you're not quite feeling it today, that's fine. But let's address it. Let's not just like phone it in and go, you know what? Like, I just don't feel like working out today. I don't feel like reading my book today. I don't want to do any of it. I think that's totally, not only is it fine, I think it's acceptable. Like, everyone's going to face burnout at some point in time. However, I didn't want to just phone that in. I wanted to like give it some thought. And that little thought process actually just came from the books I had read, which was, Goggins' book and Atomic Habits, but more so kind of like how I was feeling. Remember, I started implementing like yoga into my daily practice and meditation. So every day, essentially, I'm sitting and kind of thinking about what I want to do when I write it down. I'm thinking about how I feel when I'm doing it, when I'm doing yoga or meditating. And, I'm reading. So a lot of what I was doing, I was kind of giving some thought to it. And it was like things to make me feel better. So the accountability kind of grew from the habits and the practice. It's like, well, if it feels good, then why not keep on doing it? And on the days when it doesn't quite feel good, then that's cool. But you kind of got to ask yourself, all right, well, why don't I want to do it? Like, why not? And if I didn't really have a good reason why not, more often than not, I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it for a little bit. Yeah. See how it feels. And that, like that, you can find that little brain trick in a ton of self-help books. But until you actually like try it on yourself, you never really know if it works. So a lot of my accountability and that mindset was experimenting. It was like, well, let's try writing down the goals. Let's try it. And then let's see how it feels when you cross it off. How does it feel when you do it? How does it feel when you don't do it? Oh, man. And let me tell you, I had a few don't do days. Like when I started this process, there was a few of those days and I let them go. I was fine. Because when I just took the time to go, all right, that's fine, and just write why I didn't do it and how it felt, I found myself addressing those like issues. Like, oh, I didn't feel like running because I just didn't want to run today. And I just felt kind of blah. But I didn't feel like good when I just binge watched Netflix either. So tomorrow, no matter what, I'm going to make it up. I'm going to do it even if I don't feel like doing it in some small little step. And then I would do that the next day and be like, wow, like I did that. And I just started to like stack those wins up, and like not only did I stack those wins, but subconsciously around like talking to my friends, like, hey, what do you got going on tomorrow? I would tell them what I was doing. So that would kind of create a little bit of accountability. And I was like, oh, well, now I'm not going to not do it. I've already written it down. I've already told someone I was going to do it. So I would find myself doing the activity and then kind of feeling good about it. Like, am I going to shoot him a text message or like, oh my God, that was brutal, or like, what the hell? I didn't quite know, but it was forging. It was happening. Like I would consider like a snowball on a mountain.
Yep.
I had started gaining some speed. I started gaining some traction.
I love that. I love that you say that you just needed to do something. You just had to do something. And so many people I used to be this way as well. So many people think it's all or nothing. You got to go full force. And if you miss a day, you skip something, you're not feeling it, you fall off the wagon, whatever metaphor you want to use, they just stop. And so like, talk to maybe the audience a little bit about like why it's okay to just do baby steps and why those baby steps are more important than nothing.
Yeah, dude, it's those baby steps I have come to discover are exactly what dramatic change leads to. More often than not, change is daunting. It really like changing anything, deciding you want to pick up a workout routine, deciding you want to learn a new skill, anything along those lines is kind of uncomfortable. And immediately you're hit with this self-doubt, like, oh man, like I was a terrible student. Or like, oh man, like I haven't worked out in so long. Whatever that challenge might be, it's daunting. And the immediate reaction is just like, I can't do it. I just don't know about it. Maybe I'll try it next week. And that maybe just those feelings are natural. And not only are they natural, but it's your body's natural reaction to just want to be comfortable. Like, hey, we're safe here. We're comfortable. This works. But that is not always conducive to growth or health for that matter. And so giving yourself the permission to just go, hey, this isn't going to happen overnight. So let's just go ahead and get that out of the way was the first step to just going, all right, now what is my very first step? Like, what is the first thing I can do at the most minimal basis to go in that direction? And I realized like, that's all it really took. And my very first step was just write it down. Write down exactly what it is you want to do, what time you want to do it tomorrow, and then just go for it. When the time comes, you're going to do it. You wrote it, you've carved out the time. Now you just have to just take that step. That's it. And I realized that like just taking that one small step was like, all right, I did that. Wasn't that bad. Wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad. Okay, let's just go ahead and repeat that tomorrow. Let's just repeat that tomorrow. And it's the smallest steps, that slight edge, that 1% better today, that 1% better tomorrow. That's what it's going to add up to. It's not going to be an overnight dramatic change. But more often than not, when we're looking for our goals, those big goals, if you're looking to climb that mountain, it's so daunting. It's so just like, I can't do it. How am I going to do it? It's too much. But you realize like, well, that first step, all I got to do is connect that step and then connect that next step. And at some point in time, it's going to get hard. And it's going to be like, man, I don't know about this. My legs are on fire. So you got to take a break. You got to take a break. You got to drop a sip of water, get some point, and kind of like readjust and recalibrate and think, all right, like where am I right now? And then you kind of got to look back and see how far you've come. And then just realize like, okay, this might be a time where I got to take a longer break than normal and really like pause and think about like which direction I need to go in next. How far have I come? What's my best route? All right, now I'm going to take that next step. And just really like holding on to that fact that like it's going to be a step forward. And occasionally like something's going to kind of go wrong, and allowing yourself the space and time for forgiveness and going, you know what, like I fell off track. However, I've come so far that I know I'm capable of doing it because I've already taken one step. Even if I've only taken 2 steps and then I've fallen off, that's fine. I've taken 2 steps further than I previously had. So guess what? I'm not going back. I've already gone a little bit further. So even when we fall back, we're falling back to a new standard every single time. But our new standard is always moving forward. And with that kind of mentality, it's nothing's a loss. It's not like, oh man, I'm so off track. It's like, no, now I just know exactly what threw me off track this time. So now I'm ready for it next time. Like, oh man, I kind of let that go for the past 2 days. Well, why? What was the cause of that? Oh, I didn't check in. I didn't even bother to check in and see why I let it go the first time. Of course, I let it go the second time. Ha, gotcha. Gotcha. So now I know that's critical. I just learned something there. All right. Must check in daily, no matter what. Cool. All right. Now I know how to avoid that. Now we can move forward. I find it like if you give yourself the permission to experiment, like instead of just like all this pressure, like this is what I'm doing and I've told everyone, now I'm a failure. What was me like, no, like that part didn't work, but I'm still working. So like, let's go ahead and like readjust that. And a lot of that is kind of that mentality and those adjustments are what allowed me to build up the consistency. That's what allowed me to link one day into 1 week into a month. And after doing that for a while, like the people around you kind of start to notice, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, like, what's your secret? Like that, like, I'm sure you can relate a little bit. I see you nodding.
Yep. I think it's really important that you say that because so many people think that whatever the goal is, whatever the vision, the success, the whatever, it is a straight line to that. And I have to follow this path and I can't deviate from it. I cannot fail. And I think it's important that you say, like, this is about experimenting. It's not about failing. So talk a little bit about how you got to that mindset of I'm not failing. I'm just adjusting my experiment so I can get to where I want to get. Like, talk about that a little bit.
Man, I love that. I'm going to keep that one. That's a keeper quote. I'm not failing. I'm just adjusting my experiment.
Yeah.
Fire. Write that one down, people. Well, that honestly, like that came from not just the books that I had been reading, but that also was kind of along the journey. I realized that the mindset aspect of chasing down a goal was just as important as the action of pursuing the goal. So I'll expand on that. I realized that I was going to have some bad days sometimes. And in checking in with myself, I realized that, how some people say, like, you got to listen to your body, like if you're working out a lot, you got to listen to your body. Well, I am a huge proponent that energy goes where the mind goes first. That's where, where energy flows, where the mind goes first. So I knew that was an important part of this process. So I started to feed my mind on a daily basis. I developed this practice of like writing down, what I wanted to do. So that was step one. Now I'm doing these things every single day and kind of like checking in. So that was like my step two. I'm starting to like track these things and kind of creating some accountability, picking up steam. And in that process, I started to also take note to what am I feeding myself? Not just like nutritional wise, but mentally wise. And I was like, well, it's kind of hard to maintain this go, go, go drive, on your own, unless you have someone around you that's kind of like go, go, go. So then I realized, I was like, well, how do I start to like develop this and like enhance it? Well, YouTube's a great source. The internet's a great source for motivation, period. So I decided like, well, if I'm writing down my goals and I'm kind of checking in and I'm feeling good and experimenting, I want to experiment with some positivity. So I was like, well, on the days that I'm not feeling it, I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to listen to something motivational. And I was like, wow, what if I started off my day with something like motivational? I had no idea what that even entailed. But I was like, there's all these motivational things out there. So I just going on YouTube and typed in motivational morning. Of things came up. So I clicked on one from David Goggins because I had read his book, and I'd also read James Clear, Atomic Habits. So that was like my blueprint. I was like, well, let me just go to people I think are like motivating. And those are my first ones. So I clicked on that, and it was just like this fired up motivational, video. And I was just like, yeah, go, go, go. And I was like, man, it really worked on a day when I wasn't quite feeling so good. But it also kind of sparked my own kind of internal motivation, like that you can do it spirit. So I was like, I kind of like that vibe. So I found myself experimenting with that, like throwing in some motivational things. And I was like, well, I noticed when you listen to like really fired up music, you kind of get fired up. If you're into like a sad music and you listen, or a sad mood and you listen to sad music, kind of just wallow in that moment. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes you need a good cry, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you throw that on. So in experimenting, I discovered that like, wow, if you want to get some more energy, listen to something that's kind of like motivating and like kind of like fires you up a little bit. So that was another like tool I threw into like my box. I was like, oh, on some days when I'm not feeling it, I'm going to listen to something like motivating. And on days when I'm really feeling it, maybe I'll throw that on and throw in some extra sauce. So that's something that allowed me to shift that mindset. But that was just like one of my tools. And that tool, I was like, all right, that works. Well, if that really works, what else is out there? And then I had what I like to call like that breakthrough aha moment where it was just like, all right, if I really want to just like attack this personal development thing, then I should just start to figure out like, what is it that I want more of? Like, man, I'm a pretty energetic person. How do I get more energy? Man, I get really energized when I listen to something motivating. So I'm going to start listening to motivational videos at some point in time throughout the day. Maybe in the morning, I'm going to listen to something motivating. Or when I get in my car, I'm going to work. Well, I usually just space out, listening to some music. What if I just start experimenting with like, hey, you can do it. And like, this is what it's all about. And like something that's like fired up, instead of just turning off my brain and just spacing out, I'm going to start to program it with things that like I want to do more of. All right, that seems interesting. So I started trying that. Like, I'm going to like, I like basketball. So I was like, well, Kobe Bryant was awesome. Kobe Bryant motivation. Well, I don't always want to listen to Kobe Bryant. So maybe I'm like, oh, like maybe I want to listen to, I don't know, Michael Jordan motivation or this boxer or anything. I just basically decided that the world was going to become my little school. Like, oh, I really like that person on TV. Well, what do they have to say about it? I would Google whoever it was I was thinking about, and I would just type in motivation, inspiration, drive, anything around them. And I just kind of read about that person. And then I would just do something that they did. So essentially I was kind of like copying really cool people that I looked up to. And then I was like, when I would find myself kind of like on an off day or wanting to go back to like my old way of like thinking or doing, because if you're thinking it, odds are you're about to do it next. So then I would kind of check myself and just be like, well, what would Kobe do? What would Goggins do? What's Bryan going to do? All right, well, what are you going to do about it? And that's how I was able to start to shift the mindset. So now I started to like take notes of that. Like, if I kind of think about what it is I want to do and why I want to do it, the how kind of becomes irrelevant, because now I don't have to think about this giant task anymore. I just have to think about my first step. Well, anyone can think about the first step. At least that's what I thought. I was like, well, the first step, if they can do it, I can do it. So what's my first step? So I just had to simplify it. And if I can simply take that first step, then that's my first step to experimentation. And along this experimentation, well, I've never done this before. So when I screw it up, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm brand new. That's okay. Cool. If I screw it up, I'm going to go to Google and figure it out. Or I'm going to think about do I have any friends or anyone else kind of doing it? Maybe I'll reach out to them. And I just started to like give myself the permission to go, I want to do that. Like I was never a really good student. So I was like, well, maybe I wasn't a good student because I didn't really like what I was learning at the time. I didn't have a why behind it. All right, well, then let's figure out a why. Like, why do I want to do this? Oh, and I would just list these things, like, and that's the more I did that, the more my friends started to pick up on that steam and started to ask me, like, hey, like, I want to work out with you. And like, what's up with this like yoga practice? And you're so energetic lately, like you're beaming. Like, what are you doing? And how do I get more of that? The more I did it, the more I was like, well, I don't want to just tell these people like, well, go read David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me, and then read Atomic Habits, and then like just do whatever they say and figure it out, because that doesn't really work either. You know what I'm saying? Like if that were the case, everyone would just go down the self-help aisle, pick up a book and do that. Instead, I realized what the trick was, the secret was taking all that information and then just breaking down the parts that you like, the parts that you're like, you know what? I like that part. I'm going to do that. I don't know about that, so I'm going to try it. And if I don't like it, it's gone. Oh, I'm going to try this. But not just like trying it on for size, like trying it for a while, like literally committing. You know what? This week, I'm going to experiment with boom. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to set a time period to do it. Even if it's only 15 minutes, that's my experiment this week. And at the end of the week, it's 7 days of doing something previously undone. So now it's like, that's going to make you feel some type of way, either good, bad, or sore. But something's going to come from it, and you're going to learn from it. And based on that experiment, then you're going to tweak it and go at it again. So when I started heading down that path, I was like, well, if this formula really works for me, I want to kind of help my friends when they ask me like, hey, what's your secret? And that that opened up the floodgates, because the moment I was like, I really like doing this and I want to do more of this, but I want to bring people along with me. How do I go about doing that? Well, it's like, well, there's only one way to be able to teach other people to do it. I guess you kind of got to learn how to teach. Wow. Well, how am I going to learn how to teach what I just been reading in books and experimenting with myself? I'm an MC, I'm a DJ, I'm a former, not alcoholic, but I'm a former like party guy, kind of don't give a hoot about anything person. You know what I'm saying? And now, I'm disciplined and focused and driven and still kind of learning like at the same time. So once again, I was like, well, if I want to teach my friends how to do this, I guess I should kind of learn how to teach. And being a terrible student and almost 20 years far removed from school, once again, I found myself back to that square one feeling again, the same feeling I had when I started on this journey. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Who's going to believe me? Who's going to think this is even possible? Except for this time, I had to kind of sit back and go, well, all it is the first step. So the first step is how to become a personal development coach, I guess. Google. And once I found that out, it sent me down the path of self-discovery into teaching. And once again, I was back to a square one. Going to take that first step. Well, you got to figure out what you don't know first. And what I did not know is there is a wide open world of coaching and mentoring and learning how to teach. So once again, I was back to a square one, except for now I had been experimenting and I know what works and what didn't work for me. I knew what I really, really wanted to do. And I kind of knew how to get there. Mm-hmm. I just needed to start to connect those dots, start to take those steps. So it was kind of like hitting the reset button. Okay, I want to learn how to teach personal development. I want to help other people, and I want to start doing it now. So there it is. I set it up and I go, tomorrow, instead of just gym, yoga, meditate, workout, read. And of course, my list by now had expanded. It expanded into find coaching programs. And that was my step one. Once I found a coaching program, now it's like, okay, now I get to learn how to teach everything I had just experimented with myself. But in the process of learning, in the process of learning how to teach, I was also learning how to do more and become a better person myself. And that was just also like spilling into my relationships. It's spilling into my conversations. It's spilling into my interactions. All of this, I realized as I was doing it, was building on that first step. Like I wouldn't have the relationships that I had developed during that time period had I not taken that first step. I would not have had the knowledge that led to me gaining the discipline in those books had I not been talking to someone about my journey and they were like, hey, you should read this book. So it had built up some steam that I didn't even realize was happening. Throughout my coaching program, I get up to the halfway point of my coaching program, which was a pivotal moment. It was a big, long weekend. And it was kind of like, all right, you've been doing all these online courses. Now it's going to be like this big weekend and this one-on-one. And, it was brutal. I mean, because I had to wake up. The program was based in Colorado and I lived in Las Vegas. So there's a time difference here. And I still was bartending Graves. So I worked like midnight to 8 a.m. And I've come to find out like, oh, great. The classes I need to take this weekend, they start at 9 a.m. Colorado time. And so I've got to be up at like 6 a.m. my time or 7 a.m. I think. So essentially I was like, wow, this is going to be interesting to say the least. But because of the habits and the mindset and the accountability that had been like developing and building up to this, instead of just being like, oh my God, I can't do this, I was like, no, this is a challenge. Like, I want to do this now. So I woke up and I did it, rubbed the sleep out of my face and drank the coffee and got it done and showed up for myself in that class. And it felt great. Something else happened in that class and during that weekend is I, once again, would be able to catapult off of the steam I had built up and didn't even realize it had been occurring. I met you. And not only did I meet you, I would come to find out that you're based in Las Vegas. So I was like, oh my God, that's incredible. You live down the street from me.
Yep.
Wow. And then not only that, but you were in a transitionary period as well. If the universe was not like shining and showing me that like, hey, it just takes one step, that moment solidified that. When I started down this path, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to feel better. A few months in, wow, I kind of want to teach other people how to do this. I don't know how to do it. I'll figure it out. A few months later, here I am in this class, still learning, not knowing what I'm going to do. But there's someone down the street that's on this path doing it too. Psh, awesome. Now I've got a new friend who's doing this. I mean, all of my friends are awesome and I love them to death, but I'm the only one that's doing this. So now it's like, sweet. Now I've got someone else I can like talk to. Yeah. And well, that took on a life of its own within its own sphere. Do you want to like chime in here?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, it comes into fruition with it all. So at the time at Positive Presence Global, we were needing male coaches because we had this huge influx of male teenagers that needed male coaches. I mean, yes, females can coach males, absolutely, but there's just something special that comes when you are learning from someone who has been somehow in your position that you are in at that moment. At some point, you were a teenage boy. Like that automatically solidifies some kind of bond that female just can't solidify with a male student. That doesn't mean we can't coach male students, but we just needed male coaches. And our founder sent out an email to everybody. It was like, if you know any male coaches, and I was like, well, I don't know this guy, but he has awesome energy. And like, we were all on a screen like this where we weren't really talking to each other, nothing, but like your energy vibrates out of the screen. And I was like, I'm going to ask him. I think he'd be a good coach. And I just reached out and voila, now you work for PPG.
Exactly. Like, and that within itself, like, I remember when you shot me that text message, you're like, hey, like, this might seem like a stretch, but I got an opportunity for you. Jessica, I remember, like, in fact, as I'm retelling the story right now, I'm getting goosebumps. I remember just being like overwhelmed, nervous, excited, and like, once again, wow, it's all happening. Immediately, I was like, I'm just getting started. Like, I'm just now getting certified. I'm still learning. And though I've already had like my own clients, like, I'm still new. And those same feelings from, years ago now came back immediately. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about this. I'm not good enough. I don't even know where to start. This just seems daunting. I can't. And then immediately it was like, wait a second. No. Like, this is opportunity. This is opportunity where we stretch now. This is where we grow. This is where we learn. This is how you get to the next level. You got to take that first step. And I just found myself once again. I even remember reaching out to you. I was like, I just don't know about this. And we talked, and you were like, I was overwhelmed when I started too, but you're going to do great. And you just like coached me through this. And not only did you coach me through it, but it like also like picked up my spirits, and it just kind of let me know like, this is the right fit. Like, everything you've been doing now has led you to this very specific point in time. You didn't know it then. You didn't know it almost 3.5 years ago. You didn't know it, when you signed up for this program, but this is it. Like, you can call it the universe, you can call it God, your personal spirit, your calling, whatever it is. Whenever you tap into that, whenever you are really attuned to it, it finds you. It has a way of finding you. And if it hasn't quite found you, then that's the time where you kind of got to sit back and just start asking some questions. You might not have those answers yet, but those questions will lead you there. And that's exactly what led me to like positive presence. Like, it was literally taking those one step at a time that led to those opportunities. And once I discovered PPG, my eyes were just opened up to this new world. I mean, the entire platform and everything about it was kind of what I had built my past 3.5 year life upon, like acceptance, understanding, self-reliance, self-love, self-care. The first time I like got an email back and saw that in the signature, I was like, oh my Lord, did they hack me? Did they hack my email? Like, these are the foundations with which I had like built myself upon, unbeknownst to me, that these are the foundations that you need to grow from. And I didn't realize how many people don't have that, including myself. I didn't realize how important that was. I didn't realize that through building up myself, I had slowly started to get these things and like make them bigger. But I realized like, oh my Lord, like, that's something that I really didn't have when I was growing up at all. And that was like through no fault of my parents or my friends. It was just something I wasn't really in tune to. And then I also realized like the moments that I thrived and shined throughout like my youth and growing up were moments where someone had touched on that a little bit and didn't even realize it. It was only in like hindsight, like, man, I was doing really good when I was doing that. And then somehow I got off that track and just never got back on it. And then I was like, oh my Lord, that's it. Like, if you're talking to someone or you have the opportunity to talk to someone, there's opportunities all around us to create that little spark, that little change. And they happen all the time. Sometimes it's because of who you're hanging out with. And you're like, I kind of want to do that too. Oh, maybe you ask them, maybe you don't. but there's a spark there. There's a moment there. I realize if you begin to capitalize on those little moments, man, the opportunity for exponential growth and change just opens up. And the moment that you connected me with Positive Presence Global, and I saw what the entire company was all about and the opportunities that it was presenting, it was a no-brainer. It was this is my calling. This is my next step. This is what I need to do now. So how do I do that? How do I have more of these conversations? How do I have a conversation and go like, hey, I know it just seems like monotonous and whatever now, but I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be across from this screen right now had I not just taken that one step. That one step. And that was a pivotal point in my life. And that step, created everything else. It literally I wasn't magically accountable and disciplined and grinding and doing all of these things I'm doing now. It was just, I'm going to create this one change. I'm going to just experiment with this and see how it feels. And then I'm going to do this next. And then I'm just going to stack onto it. And throughout this whole process, I came up with this little catchphrase I live by. And I constantly say it. It's tap into what moves you, keep hammering. And essentially that means tap into whatever it is that fires you up, scares you just a little bit and is a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. Tap into that. Just do that and keep hammering at it. Just assess and just do it again. Do it again. Do it again. And if you don't like how it's going, reassess and come back at it. But the goal is to just tap into it, because with an experimental mindset, nothing's a failure. In fact, you kind of welcome that opportunity. Like something's going to go wrong. So you know what? When it does, great. Oh, I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. Boom. All right. Now what am I going to do about it? Yeah. All right. It's not even a step back. It's just another step forward. And like with that kind of like mindset and that drive, you're unstoppable. You're literally unstoppable. And that's a powerful force. And getting to have conversations like that and, talking to like any of the students that I have now and having that opportunity to go like, hey man, like it's okay. Like bad week, cool. What are we going to do about it now? Like, what do you want to do? Like, you don't have any direction yet? That's fine. Let's write down the things that you really, really like doing. And then like, let's start experimenting with that. Let's start to like tap into that. And no matter what it is, I mean, nowadays kids can get paid to play video games. So if there's a way to tap into what moves you, I'd say now is the time. And we have plenty of opportunity to do so.
That's huge. Your story is so important because I think a lot of people don't want to take a step until they know what the goal is, what the end result will be, what is going to happen, how it's going to go, what the trajectory is. And it's really important to hear that it just starts with a step, and it just starts with like tapping into what moves you. I love that. And like, I'm like kind of at a loss for words because it's so rare and it's so special to hear that it's okay if you don't know what you're going to do. It's okay if you don't know what's going to happen. It's okay to make one step. It's okay to start the progression of this. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that. Yeah. And so say someone in our audience right now is listening and going, gosh, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how to get there. I'm afraid to make a step. Like, what would you say to them?
Oh, my very first catalyst would be to sit down and honestly, with a pen and paper, because a pen and paper kind of forces you to slow down and really give thought to your words. And you write down what's scaring you. What like you write down what's stopping you, what's holding me back. And no matter what the case may be, if you're wanting, let's say you're stuck right now and you are wanting to change careers. and you just don't even know what the career is. All right, well, where am I at in my career right now? And you start writing down that list. Where would I like to be? So now your brain's starting to reach, your brain is going to start to search for those answers. And you might not have them yet, but now you've got those questions. Go back to that drawing board. Write down like exactly what it is that's scaring you. And then the very next step that I always like to expand upon when I'm looking for direction is, what do I want? As broad and as big as possible with no limitations. 3 years. In 3 years, where do I want to be in a dream world? How much money do I want? I want $100,000 in 3 years. What do I want? How am I going to get $100,000 in 3 years? What do I like to do? What am I doing right now that could lead to that? What am I willing to do that'll lead to that? Am I willing to do that? I don't know. Am I willing to do that? Oh, maybe. Do I have a path to doing that? I don't know. All of these questions start with the pen and the paper in a broad scope. So to answer that question like directly, I would say, what is your very first step to taking that first step? Pick a target. Pick just one specific target in your life that you just want to focus on, whether it's your career, whether it's studying, whether it's your health, whether it's your diet, your nutrition, your mindset, activity, whatever it is. Don't just take everything as a whole. Just take one aspect of your life, just one, and go, how do I want to change that one part? What am I doing now? What am I capable of doing? And what am I willing to do tomorrow? That would be my broad-based answer right there. What do I want to do? What am I willing to do? And what is my very first step tomorrow? Taking it from there.
A quote that I recently heard that your whole story makes me think of is, as we age, as we mature, as we do all the things we're doing, we never start from scratch. We're starting from some place of experience, whether it's just experience of life, whether it's experience of, I've ate this way and I want to change it, whatever the case is. And I think your story is just a testament to that. Like you've made a step and you were always like, oh God, I got to go back to square one. But you were always starting from some place of experience. And I think a lot of people are just fearful of, okay, if we're going to completely change careers, like they have no experience in that career, but they have a whole life experience in this realm. Like there's still experience there. You're not 5 starting from nothing. And so that's just what your story kind of like made me think of.
That's spot on. That's seriously, Jessica, like you summed it up right there. That is spot on. Like we are always starting from somewhere. You hit the nail on the head there.
It's amazing. I could literally talk to you for hours.
We could be here for hours. I'm pretty sure we've said that before. Oh man. Like, thank you so much for like taking the time to like hear my story and like really explore, like this journey. Like it's been something to behold, and it's still like unfolding. I'm still taking these.
I think it's still a journey.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's still happening.
Yeah.
It's still happening.
Well, for the sake of the audience, let's start to wrap up. But I want people to know how to reach out to you and know how to find you. So, like, how can people get in touch with you if they are inspired by this?
Dynamite. Well, you can find me directly at positivepresenceglobal.com. You go under coaches and you can scroll and find me there. If you just search me, Bryan Robinson, you can find me on Facebook, big smiling face. And I am at the Alex and Co on Instagram, THALEXANDCO on Instagram. So pretty easy to find. See this big smiling face, and that's that.
Love it. Well, you are such a joy. I love your story, and I hope the audience does too. And I know every person who's listening to this got something from that, because it's such an inspiring story. And I love that your story is so inspiring, and you're still like in it. Like this is still like the beginning stages of this new part of your life. And it's already so inspiring. Like that's so special. And thank you for just sharing that with everyone.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me. And thank you, Positive Presence Global, for the Coach Takeover. I appreciate it. Cheers.
Yay.